Okay. So, now that you reviewed my teaching lesson for inflectional endings, um, what did you like about the video, or what activities did you enjoy the most?
I personally enjoyed your lesson as far as how you were engaging the students and just giving them positive feedback, acknowledging them, and giving them encouragement. As far as activities, I really liked your ING and ED booklets.
Okay.
Also, choral reading again because it kept them engaged and involved in the lesson.
Okay. Good. So, besides like everything you enjoyed, what suggestions would you give me to make the lesson better, or better for the students overall?
I personally think you did an amazing job. Maybe just adding the booklet onto the board and maybe reading off of the board, and
Okay.
then following along with their little booklets.
Okay.
But as far as everything else you did, I think you did amazing. I would just maybe add that as a
Okay.
suggestion.
Um, so, do you think my lesson was like too long or too short? Like, do you think I could have possibly broken it up into like 2 days, where like I could have taught like ing, one day, and then the ed ending another day, or do you think it was okay like just doing them both one day, um, type of thing?
I think I would have probably left it just like you, both the same day, or else it
Okay.
would have been a lot more repetitive. Um, I think it was good the way you had it, because you still were able to go over the ING a good amount and the ED a good amount altogether. With the booklets, with the video, everything. I think it was good. I would have probably left it the way that you did it as well.
Okay. Okay, that's good. I wasn't sure because it was a pretty lengthy video. It was almost about half an hour. So and normally like that's how I divide up my day. I normally do it by like 30-minute lesson increments. So time wise it hit the time frame. I just wasn't sure just because they are first graders, and 30 minutes is a long time for them. So that
Yeah.
was my really only concern, but I
No,
think they
I
would,
think it was good.
yeah, I think they would grasp it pretty well.
Yeah.
So that's good. And then now I know for like future reference to just leave it at the 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Um,
I would.
okay.
I like.
Okay, thank you. So regarding the
Mhm.
4 questions that I sent you through email, do you want to go ahead and go over those?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
So for number one, it says, based on your analysis of student learning evidence, establish what has been learned and by whom, what has not been learned and by whom, and who needs additional support to meet standard. What have you learned about our students' learning characteristics that you did not realize previously?
Okay. So for that one, what has been learned and by whom? I obviously taught an inflectional ending lesson with ing and ed, and by whom it's a first grade standard, so it would normally be taught to a first grade group of students. Um, what has not been learned and by whom? Um, so for that one, probably the students that I would have to focus more on throughout the lesson would be students who have an IEP or a 504 plan, or also students who are ELLs, just because they do need additional support at times, whether it be throughout the teaching part of the lesson or the activities. So just mainly watching out for those group of students and just kind of making sure that they understand the concept. They're not going to grasp it as well, but that's okay. I mean, as long as they are participating and are engaged in the lesson, that's really my hope. So, like I said, who needs additional support, it would most likely be them. Um, and then what I learned about my students' characteristics is that, obviously when teaching the lesson, distractions is something that really comes into play when teaching. Whether it be, somebody, if we were in the classroom, it would probably be somebody walking in and out, or the bell would go off, or it could be something in the classroom, whether it be a poster that they're looking at, or something they're playing with at their desk. And I thought maybe time would also be a factor if we ran out of time, if recess came up, or it was time for ELD and we had to do a rotation. Um, and also watching out for behaviors. It could be any student really that had a behavior issue. So that's something that I'd have to really, make sure that I have something planned just in case it were to happen. But with, students who have behavior um, problems, it's probably going to be something that's going to occur most of the time. So just watching out for that, I probably have to like kind of show my focus onto those group of students just in case.
Yeah. Okay, pretty good. So for number 2, formulate how effective your instructional design was based on your planning and teaching as evidenced by data collected on student process and products of learning.
Okay. So when teaching or when planning the lesson, really, I wanted to make sure the students had activities that would really grab their attention and kind of just show me that they were understanding the concept that I was teaching. So in reality, the activities could have gone either way. It could show me, yes, they understand, or no, we need to retouch on something, or I need to go over something again. And so I wanted to make sure they were activities that the students could perform independently on their own without my help. And so a lot of the times in lower grade levels, it's a lot of drawing and coloring, and so I was a little worried about if I were to teach this in a first grade classroom, them creating their own sentences. Is it something that all students can do, or some may struggle with? Um, so one thing that I did notice in the lesson is, obviously my students weren't first graders, but when they made their own sentence, it was in the correct tense. They were using the correct ending. So for example, one of the sentences was, I think I got dressed for school this morning. So they weren't saying, I got dressing for school this morning. They were using the correct ending, and their picture reflected that. So when seeing that worksheet completed, I was able to see, yes, they are understanding the concept and they are getting the lesson. So let's move on to the next activity. So that was something that I really wanted to make sure was involved in the lesson, just in case, for example, in a first grade classroom, if there was confusion, I knew exactly what to retouch or touch up on again. But their worksheets were my evidence, and like I said, they weren't first grade students, but it helped just seeing that they were doing them correctly, so I knew to move on to the next section.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was pretty straightforward. For number 3, moving forward, how will you plan differently based on your knowledge of student learning characteristics, both previously known and newly discovered? Which additional differentiations, strategies, and multi-tiered levels of support will you consider?
So in my learning map, like some of the things that two of my students that I identified were one student who had autism, so he was on an IEP, and then another student who was an English language learner. So those are populations of students that every teacher has, and we have to watch out for. And so I knew right away that I wanted to not just make my lesson, just me lecturing. I knew it had to be more engaging for them. So I wanted to appeal to all of their senses. So, for example, the video was auditory. The drawings were visuals for them. And so I wanted, I knew I had to plan my lesson differently just to appeal to them as well. And at sometimes they may not understand the concept, and that's okay. That's completely understandable. And so one of the things that I would most likely do if a student showed that they weren't grasping the concept, I would most likely switch over to maybe small group instruction. I teach an SDC classroom, so for me small group is definitely the way to go. And that's just dividing them into smaller groups of students, so maybe 5 or 6 students per group. And in an SDC classroom, I would have my instructional assistants teach their own small group, and then me teach one as well. And then we would just go ahead and teach the concept, do the same activities, but the fact that it's a smaller group of students, they probably feel more comfortable to ask questions or ask for help if they need it. I would be there to just kind of, guide them towards the right direction or stop them and kind of just reinforce, like, oh, let's change this, and then that'll kind of just give them that little push that they need to continue on their own. So that's something that I would do, or if it's maybe one or two students in particular, it's not the majority of them, I would probably just pull up a chair and sit next to the kiddo and kind of just guide them and give them kind of that acknowledgement that they need. Sometimes they just need the teacher's reassurance that they're doing it correctly and that that's the correct answer. Or whether it be they need help in reading, I would just sit there and help them blend and kind of just guide them through the decodable. But it could really work either way. It just depends on the kiddo and what they struggle with. So that's something that I would do, but small group would probably be my additional level of support for sure.
Yeah. Okay. For number 4, how will you modify, extend, or incorporate new levels of presentation, expression, and engagement for each learner's group as it relates to their processes and products of learning?
So for that one, I know like at the beginning of our video, you mentioned when reading the decodables, like possibly projecting my decodable on the Elmo so that they could see it. And a lot of times that's sometimes needed because a lot of students can't maybe see the fine small print on their booklet, so they prefer to see it in a much bigger projected version on the board. And since that's something that my kiddos are definitely used to, that's something I could incorporate into the lesson just to give them that additional support if they need it, if it's just a matter of I can't see the small words. So that's something that I would definitely add. And it'll just help them follow along, especially if I just you can see my finger moving down the sentence, it'll help them just kind of follow along with me and kind of just know that we're choral reading, so I read and then you read. And then something that I would add as well, and this is just something that I noticed after I did my lesson and I performed it. I watched it over again and I thought, oh, I should have tried this instead. But like for example, halfway through the lesson, I asked a student to come up with or to give me a word that had an ing ending. So for example, if my kiddo would have said sweeping, and I would have asked them to stand up and show me what sweeping looked like. So you would physically see them, put their hands together and pretend to be sweeping, kind of moving left and right. And that would have been good for them just so that they would have matched the action to the word. It would have helped them just kind of with their memorization skills to know that, ing is happening right now. And that's something that we could have done as an activity for, maybe choose 5 or 6 kids and kind of just have them perform it. And maybe even the kiddos who are struggling, like my ELLs or my kiddos who are on IEPs or 504 plans, I could have asked them to do it so they would have known, it would have just helped them with their memorization skills. It would have, like I said, matched the motion to the word. It would have been some type of kinesthetic, skill that they could have performed to better grasp the concept. And that probably would have fallen under different levels of engagement. And that's something I could have done towards the end of the lesson, just, as after the exit ticket or even before. But that's something that I feel I probably could have added. And definitely if we had time, because I know that probably would have ran a little bit longer than I thought. So who knows how much time I would have had. But 30 minutes was, a really good mark. So that's something I would have added and just maybe cut something a little shorter so that fit in the 30-minute time frame.
Yeah, that's good. I agree. Well, I think you did an amazing job. I really enjoyed your little lesson. It was fun watching you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Well, again, I want to thank you for letting me take a chunk of your day and going over my video as well. And thank you for the feedback. Like I said, the feedback is always good, whether it be, change this, anything good or anything really helps, and it just really encourages me. So I want to thank you again for being able to do that with me.
Yeah, it was a joy. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you again, and